Alrighty, howdy folks. I'd like to show you how to make the third thing that goes with our graphic organizer session, and that is how to make a scoring guide. So, first thing we're going to do with this blank Google Doc is change the margins and the orientation. We're going to do that by going up here to File, and then Page Setup, and then I want to change the orientation to Landscape. That gives us more horizontal room to work with. And also we want to change the margins, which increases the total amount of room we have to work with in general. So all of these ones over here on the right side, that's the default in Google Docs. We're going to change them to 0.5s. 0.5, tab 0.5, tab 0.5, tab 0.5. All right, cool. We're going to do that. Now we've got all this space, and we also have a document kind of turned on its side in landscape orientation. We're going to start with 3 rows in our table. So let's do insert, table, and then we're going to do 3 rows and just 1 column for now. The first row is going to be for our title, so we can type a title. How about Little Fires Everywhere, paragraph scoring guide? Italicize that. The second row, I like to center it again with this button here, and then I'm going to type in my course info, English 9A, Reardon, spring 2023. And then this last row here is going to be for student information. So I like to do 4 columns for 4 different pieces of information. So I did a right click here and then split cells. And we want 1 row still, but 4 columns. You have to click again so the button turns blue and then do that, and you end up with the 4 columns. The first one is going to be name, the second one, class period, the third one, roster number. That just corresponds in my class to the alphabetical position on the class roster that the student is in. It's really helpful for alphabetizing papers for entry into the gradebook. Of course, you can leave it out if it's not relevant to you. I also have a seat code in my room, and that corresponds to where they are in the classroom. Once I've scored papers, I can then put them in order by seat code, and that way, when I distribute them in class, it's really easy. I know exactly where every student sits, and I can just distribute them all to the students really fast. So I'm going to make this a little smaller here. Just drag it over. Students don't need that much space for those pieces. All right. And now we're going to make some aesthetic changes to this. It looks a little funny right now. I'm going to start with the title. I want the font here to be bigger. So I'm going to do 18. This one, I like the font to be 10. And then for the rest of the document, it should be 12. 12 is the default for most things. All right, and then all of this, I want it to be Garamond. Garamond is a different font. I like it. It just seems to look better to me in my curriculum. Oh, and I like these to be bold as well. So I'm going to select that. You can do Command B or Control B on your computer, and then select this and Command B. If you prefer to use the bold button here, you can also do that. All right, and I want to change the borders as well. These black borders are really they're really bold and they really stand out when you print the document if you do something with it on paper. So I think it's really pleasing to change it to gray. So I'm going to use this button here. Don't use the paint can. That's going to fill the cells. We'll use this one here to change the borders to gray. I'm going to click here above the yellow, and there. Now all our borders are gray. All right, so at this point, we're going to leave a gap, and we want to start with, we insert another table, and the number of rows to start should just be 3. but the number of columns will vary a little bit based on what it is that you want to create. So I recommend the total number of criteria you have when grading or scoring, the total number of different descriptors plus one. That's how many columns you need. So, for example, I use standards-based grading in my AP English language course, and we typically grade with 4 different descriptors, 4, 3, 2, 1. So that's 4 descriptors plus one more column. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to go over here. So we end up creating a 5 by 3 table. I'm going to create that. I'm going to change the aesthetics here right now as well so I don't forget. I'm going to change the Arial to Garamond 12 and the borders over here to gray. Cool. So now I'm going to drag this one over a little bit. We want this leftmost column to be a little skinnier than the others. I'll just put it like there. We might have to adjust it again later. And then distribute the rest of these columns. So to do that, we're going to select them, right-click or two-finger click on a Mac, and then distribute columns. And now they're all exactly the same width. For this one, I want to choose everything again and make sure it gets center aligned. I want to click the center align button up here and then start putting in some labels. Across the top, we want learning target. And then I like to do the labels of the levels of performance. In AP English Language, I use sophistication as the highest, application, and then I just identification and just insufficient evidence. And so that's for the English labels. And then below them, I usually put the numbers that correspond. So 4, 3, 2, 1. You do something different, you might have your labels, your basic labels up top, and then, more traditional grades in these boxes like A, B, C, D, or even specific point values. If you want to switch these, you want to put the numbers on top and the descriptors on the bottom, that's fine. Whatever works for you. Now, we're not going to do anything with this little cell right here, so I actually recommend just merging this cell with the above one. We'll just select the two, right-click, and then merge cells. Now, wait, this should be centered in the box, and it's not, which is kind of weird. It looks kind of funny. So we're going to fix that. Let's do a right-click, table properties, alignment, and then change the cell vertical alignment to middle. Done. All right, so now that's in the center, it looks much more pleasing. I'm going to choose this. I'm going to make it bold. Just seems to make sense here. Now for this one, this next row, this is where you're going to be putting your learning target and your descriptors for each level of performance. Of course, we'll want to make this row bigger. I usually start with 3 inches and then go from there. So I'm going to select this row, right-click, table properties again. I'm going to collapse the alignment window and choose row. And then a minimum row height, the default is 0.306. I'm going to change that to 3. And now this box is 3 inches tall. I happen to notice that if you type here, then it actually starts at the top and not in the middle, which actually I think I want for these, so that's fine. Now, here you would type your learning target. I usually like to word it in the mind of the student. I can do this or that, and then I like what you actually do, what the student actually does, but from their perspective. And you write it, and then you would do that for each of these 4. And that's it for your scoring guide. Now, If you have multiple categories or multiple learning targets that you want to assess, then that's where you might start adding more rows. I'm going to zoom out here a little bit to 100%, and I can add some more rows here. So I'm going to go right click, insert row below. Of course, I did that and it's on the next page, which is kind of awkward. So we can fix that by just changing ever so slightly, making these a little bit smaller. I'm selecting them both, right click, table properties, minimum row height. Let's try 2.5. That seems to work. There's actually still a little space at the bottom, maybe 2.6. That still fits. That's probably the biggest we're going to get. So I'm going to just stick with that. And then I would put in another learning target and some more criteria. Maybe I would do this, for example, if I had multiple categories in the gradebook. In a traditional gradebook, I might say this is the reading portion of the assignment and this is the writing portion of the assignment, and then there's a speaking and listening portion. If I wanted a big rubric with multiple parts, then I could always select these, both of them, right click, and now Google Docs has automatically given us this option to insert 2 rows below, and we can do that and insert more rows down below. All right, so that's what you need in order to build your own scoring guides.